Okay, we are back. Uh, when we left, ran all the simulations, and we kept hitting refresh, and then finally, when it came back refreshed, all the simulations came back dark green. There are indicators up here, and here's the legend for the different colors. And we see that it's not started, and it goes to a queued, and from there normally it goes to gold, which is running, and then it hits this thing called polling. And what it's doing then is that it's got a indicator back from the job server that it's done, but then it has to go and pull the results back, and you'll see that until finally it goes dark green, and then what you'll see is you'll see these light up, this package selection and results. Um, if you need to reset for some reason and rerun, you hit this and rerun, but you can also go in and look at the individual runs and in here, and you can also reset an individual run and rerun it. But anytime you make changes back here in the input, it will also reset it automatically, and it'll have to be rerun before it allows you to move on. In here, you also are able to go down here, and you can actually download the files. It's kind of an advanced feature, um, but we do that at times. Sometimes mainly to kind of troubleshoot to see if we run into a problem. We can download those and take a look at that and see what we find. Anyway, it'll just kind of sit here until you're ready to move on. We hit continue to move on. When we come to the package selection, this isn't necessarily a pertinent step until we get alternatives and we start looking at the EEMs, which what you're really doing is selecting the EEM package. And when we get back and create some alternatives, this will become more applicable. So we're going to move on to the results. And at this point, we have all the energy reports and results that show up here. The ones I mainly use is site summary. And so we'll click on that now and have it load. And there's a few things here. We see that this is kind of the rolled up status. We also hit the magnifying glass and it kind of rolls things out so we can get an idea. But it tells us we had 53 facilities and we had about 3.2 million square feet. Our total site electric was looks like about 16,394 kBTUs. And somebody says, well, you know what? I don't really know what kBTUs are. And you say, well, okay, let's change it to kilowatt hours. And we see we had about 48 million kilowatt hours, but even that may be too much. We can do it in megawatt hours. We have 48,052 megawatt hours. So these can be changed, and this will convert to whatever you want to see here, whatever makes the most sense to you. I'm going to go ahead and leave that one on kilowatt hours. And I'm going to keep the site electric intensity at kBTUs per foot squared. Now, some people like to look at that in kilowatt per foot squared or kilowatt hour per meter squared, and there's lots of different conversions. You can't believe how many errors are made in converting output units in reports, and so we spent time to allow this to do it automatically, so you could go between conversions easily. The site reduction, of course, we have no reduction because we're this is based on the baseline, and there's nothing that reduced. KBTUs, once again, you can go from therms, which you had 2.3 million therms. I'm going to go ahead and leave those in KBTUs. And if you took the KBTUs as total, divided by this area, you would end up with these intensities. Now, this is the gas intensity and the electric intensity, and then together we see we have the site total energy intensity in kBTUs, and of course this is our cost. So we have on this one we have about $6.4 million per year, and it goes out a little bit further to the right for some things here when we eventually will get into the investment cost of our EEMs. This will give us the delta investment cost we need to make to implement those above and beyond business as usual. And then we have our annualized investment and energy cost, and then finally the site total energy in whatever set of units we like. And so in this case, it's 232 million megawatt hours is our site total energy. So we have lots of heating energy here in our buildings here. So yeah, that's the rolled up numbers, and that gives you the at an installation level what's going on. But at the same time, we can unroll the data into each individual facility group, and we see how many facilities are in that group, what the area is in that group, and pretty much the same columns. And so we can kind of see what the contributions are by by uh, by individual contributors. What we see here is we have our dining facility, which is a good, there's a lot of activity and internal loads going on there, so we see those results here. We see we got our physical fitness center here. So basically we can go down by building type and see all of the contributions. Now to get that to scroll, we can either use the scroll bar to kind of scroll. I mean, there is a scroll bar out here to the far right, or in this case I can use the scroll wheel on my mouse. I can go up and down inside the window, but that scroll bar is out here, that you can get to it. Now fortunately, when you're at this point, you can scroll using the mouse wheel, which allows you to move up and down easily without having to scroll out first. Once again, you look at the contributions of these areas for these, and you can see we go from smaller areas here to where we have 5 facilities at 346,000, and these guys obviously there's 8 of them, but there's still only 172,000 feet of that. Now our tactical equipment maintenance facilities, we see we got 5 of those, but they're large facilities, and they total up to be almost 700,000 square feet. So we can look at our results here with this data. When we close that, it just drops back down to this site and gives us this back. We are able to download our file like we could with the facility summary. We click this and we can download that, and it'll basically drop all of this information in. We'll probably do that later when we have some alternatives, because I really want to quickly talk about some of the other important ones that I use. The other one that's good is if you want to see the source summary. What it does is it takes that same information, it's pretty much the same, but multiplies by the source to energy conversion ratio, and then it multiplies that and gives you the difference in source energy. And so you see that you have those pretty much the same columns, and the same way the ability to roll and unroll the data. So if its source is important, I'm definitely coming in here to get that information. The other couple of things that are really important to me, one is the energy intensity by end use. That basically gives me an intensity on everything. So once again, I popped it out with the magnifying glass. In this case, I want it to all be in the same units. At least that's the way I like to look at it. So I'm looking at everything the same, and I'm going to put it in kBTUs per foot squared, so it'll give me magnitudes. What we see right here is that our rolled up intensity of 125, that should match that 125 that was on the site summary report. Same thing with the area for 53 facilities. But then we pop that open, and we have a couple different views here. One is this details view, and we'll come back to that. But we have this site use, which allows us to get a graphic of our different energies, our gas. We also have once again the details, and of course the total resource breakdown. We can see that the gold here, or heating, is our largest contributor. This is the largest piece here, with our interior lights sitting here about 10%, 12% for equipment. Fans is 7.5, and it just goes around. So about 10% for electricity. But so this, in our baseline case here, we're sitting at about 55% of the energy goes into heating of that 125. So let's go back to the details. What we can do, we also can take the details at a rolled up site level, and we can break it down in, and we can see, and this is averaged over all the facilities. So we see that in lights on average. And I like to look at the last column here, which is the annual. This is the monthly. You can see how the monthly breaks down. But the last column here gives you, so in this case, all the buildings are sitting about 12 kBtu per foot squared. In this case, let's go ahead and change that really quickly to kilowatt hour per foot squared. That'll give us a an intensity on the load, and we can see. So we're looking at lights that average up about 3.75 across all the facilities there. We'll go back and put the common back to kBtu per foot squared. So it changed here. Like I said, you can see this, and so you can see that the interior equipment and lights are 3.75 and 4.56. Remember that, once again, that's all the facilities. And no, it doesn't. All that does is gives you a quick graph of that, and we can see the difference in the days per month and how many weekends and stuff are in the month, mainly in that. But let's go back to the individual details so we can see what the contributors are. So we can come here to our, let's say, school primary, and once again we have the graphic breakdown of it for electric and gas, and we have the details again. And this is what I look at this a fair amount. So we can see that we got interior gas equipment in the school, so probably small kitchens, heating and hot water, interior lights, exterior lights, interior equipment, fans, pumps, and cooling. We can see kind of the monthly contribution of those, currently in kBtu per foot squared, and come over here and we see the annual contribution. So of our 86 for the school, we see there's interior lights, exterior, interior equipment, cooling's about 2 kBtu. This is at kilowatt hours per foot squared here, and this is still down in kBtus, but majority of that's heating, just a little bit in water, a little bit in gas equipment. Majority of that, 80 kBtus of this is in heating. And we see that the go ahead and change this back to kBtus per foot squared, and we can see that there's 45 of that in the electric, 15, almost 16 of that in lights and equipment, and then broken down by the fans and the HVAC equipment. So those are all really good things. The other thing is demand by end use, and I look at the intensity for the energy, and then I like to look at the demand for everything, because this gives you an idea of what what your peak electrical is and peak gas. See, this is in kilowatts. So you got about let's go back to common here. Let's just kick that to megawatts. We see we got 22.83 peak megawatts here as our electric demand, and 87 in gas. So this is, and then I like to see what the contributions are to to that peak demand. So that's, like I said, it's 3.2 million square feet, so it's kind of large, and that's it's a fairly large demand. So you have to, this is how you check how big your service that you need. And like I said, we got breakdowns here. Once again, it breaks down by building type. You can swap units as you go between all these, and you can go down into every one of these again and look at electric, gas, and details to see how the demand and where the demand is actually coming from for your building. So it's a good breakdown area. We're going to close out of this. A couple other reports that I use is this load duration curve, and this helps us determine. It gives us a view of what our peak is. So I'm going to put this in kBtu per hour, so it's energy, and we'll see what our baseline is. And this one it's interesting to look at it in the site load. So this is looking at an 8760 view. What it does right now, what it's doing is it's going up and downloading 8,760 hour profiles for each of those buildings, adding them all up, summing them up on concurrently on the hour, and then it's sorting those by from the largest load to the smallest load. And what we see is we see, and right now we're looking at our heating demand, and we can see it's pretty what do I want to say? You got a very, very large peak. Now we saw that peak a minute ago, but that peak sitting here is sitting up here pretty high, and you can see that the next few hours it drops rapidly. And so you pay a lot of money for this to serve this peak, where your equipment you might have large equipment that you can see that the fraction of full load is going to be fairly small a lot of the times. And so this is really an interesting diagram to look at. We can also pop that out and look at that, and we can see what that is for our hot water. Now we see our peaks here, and we can see this is a better load. We got 8,000 hours of probably 8760 of something, but 6,000, it runs pretty good at our fraction of full load. Let's see what our cooling is. Yeah, so we got a pretty good peak. Not as bad as that heating peak, but once again, we got good hours up here, like what, about 3,000, 2,000 really, and then we got a tail out here, but pretty good peak here. So those are some things we also want to cut out. Let's look at our electric. Electric, well, you can see what it looks like. Fair amount of hours up here, and then you see a lot of here. So a lot of the electricity is becomes lights and internal loads. Runs this base here across the bottom, and then you start adding in your fans and your cooling into this. We do have this combined heating and cooling, and you can get a rough comparison, but really the better ones are to look at this. And so this gives you an idea. I'm sorry, the cooling here. So this gives you an idea how your peaks stack up. So this gives a quick idea of how things look. The last thing that we have, and at this point, is this phasing study, phasing energy, and it's really a download, and we'll look at that. At some time in the future. So at this point, what I end up doing many times is downloading this, and this is kind of how I document what we have done in here. We also can cut different reports out of here. The phasing study also does, and the source also does a download, and the phasing study, when it comes here, it is a downloadable report. What we do on that is we talked about having that existing, renovated, and demolished dates in there. And what we want to do is see what, we can see what this will look like at some point in the future, let's say 10 years out. We download that report. It generates the file. We're going to call that phase report. And let's just download that. And it goes through there and takes all the buildings. Takes all the buildings that are in there, and it goes and does the this phasing report, and we can see here that it goes through and we can see what buildings are active and what buildings are not active at this point, and gets all the electricity and stuff loaded up so it'll take the existing structure, and if it's before the renovation date, you'll get the baseline numbers here, and then if it's you'll see that the demolished is here and the planned are not here. So this one is 2025 is beyond this demolished date, so it was actually demolished in 2020. And so it's not showing up. So you can see where the zeros are. So these were all demolished in 2025. If we'd run this at 2024, all of these warehouses would have been in this report. And so this is, and then what I do is I sort this and get whatever type of, how in this case it was sorted by we can sort by construction date, and that's why we have these, but we can also sort it by, let's sort it by, let's just do conditioned area, I do that because I know that these are the zeros that'll be sitting here. These will be the buildings that aren't in it, and then these are the buildings that are in the baseline that are existing. That some have been renovated, like this one, and some have not been renovated, like this one. So it takes the loads for the different types of buildings. Now, since we don't really in this alternatives, we don't have any data for renovation, we're not really going to see much difference. Like I said, this report will make more sense when we get alternatives in place. So at this point, we've covered a lot of the output, and I think we're going to go ahead and stop.